This is the first Sunday in the season of Lent, not the first Sunday of Lent. That's an important distinction to remember. That's why when people look at the calendar and try to understand, it's not 40 days from Ash Wednesday to Easter. Well, that's true, because Sundays don't count. For the early church, Sunday was like a little Easter celebration. And so as the concept of Lent developed, Sundays were excluded. That makes this the first Sunday in the season of Lent, but not the first Sunday of the season of Lent. Either way, in our first lesson, we have a historical reference about King Uzziah and a vision that the prophet Isaiah had at the time Uzziah died. A marvelous description for us of heaven in all its glory. From the writings of the prophet Isaiah, chapter 6, beginning at verse 1. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the threshold shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, for I am lost. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people with unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin is atoned for. And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, Here I am, send me. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. In one of Paul's letters, he describes himself as an ambassador for Christ. Now, in our day and age, we know that an ambassador is someone who represents his home country in a foreign land. We're all ambassadors because we've all been given the opportunity to share the good news of Jesus. This is from Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 10, verses 14 through 17. St. Paul writes, How then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in him of whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? And how are they to preach unless they are sent? As it is written, How beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news. But they have not all obeyed the gospel. For Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed what he has heard from us? So, faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I remember as a kid, when my mom would be cleaning, my sister playing with dolls, my brother with his action figures, and me with my nose in a book, Mom would sometimes make the comment, so, I get to be the only one cleaning the house, right? I guess it was her desire that we would all jump up and say, Here am I, send me. Didn't quite happen that way. But you know, it's no different in the church. There are people out in our community, in our neighborhoods, in our families, who are literally dying to hear the gospel message of Jesus. But there are so few people willing to share. This is the gospel according to Matthew, the 9th chapter, beginning at the 35th verse. Glory to you, O Lord. And Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. And he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.